Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A Zelda expansion. Could it possibly be coming to Walt Disney World's biggest upcoming competitor? And if it does, what would that look like? Joining us today for this discussion is theme park wizard and expert in all things theme parks, but especially in the Disney parks and Universal Studios. Now, to give some context to why we're talking about the potential for a Zelda expansion, one first needs to know that last Sunday evening on the online or the Renegade Online show with Valiant Renegade, I broke the news that the Mario Brothers movie is coming out. Well, I didn't break that news, but what I did break out is that if it surpasses a certain success rate at the box office, and now I can say that that number is very likely $700 million. If it grosses $700 million, that is seen by many inside the industry and probably inside the studios that control Mario and Nintendo and all these sorts of things as far as film rights and theme park rights. $700 million is seen as the place that it needs to get in order for them to go forward with some plans of launching an NCU, not an MCU, right? It's not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the Nintendo Cinematic Universe. And the idea there, what I broke exclusively on the Valiant Renegade show, was that there's not a Mario 2 necessarily coming out after the Mario movie that we get coming up in this year, 2023, but rather, likely what was in development in the very early stages is a Zelda movie out of Illuminations. And then guess what? Only 4 days later, this past Thursday, the website Giant Freaking Robot corroborated that and said that their source, independent of me, independent of any credit given to me, so I assume this is completely separate, they said that they had a source claiming to them that Zelda is indeed in the early stages of development at Illuminations for a future movie. And all of this is coming as various sources for me are saying that a Nintendo cinematic universe and push into interlapping and also interconnected franchises for merchandising, for toy lines, for all of that stuff is on the way. You might say that we are entering an era of Super Smash Brothers, but not in video game form, in the cinematic form, in all of the toys we buy and the merchandise that we buy. Now, one of the things that is highly interesting about this is what we've got going on in Orlando, and that's why we brought Theme Park Wizard. And Mr. Wizard, can you tell us, please, a little bit about Epic Universe and exactly why it is such a competitive juggernaut coming down the pipe at the Walt Disney World Resort?
Yes, and thank you again for having me on. So, Universal Orlando, of course, they have two theme parks, Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure. But, a few years ago, they bought up like 1,000 or so acres of land, planning this massive third theme park right after coming on the heels of Volcano Bay, which opened in 2017, their water park, to really take on Walt Disney World and capture some of those vacation days from the vacationers. So they bought this massive plot of land that's a little bit away from the main resort, and here they are, they're building this massive third theme park, Epic Universe, with multiple themed lands for to start. And as you can see with this map, multiple expansion pads. You have the How to Train Your Dragon land, of course, Super Nintendo World, the full Super Nintendo World with the Donkey Kong and the Yoshi and the Mario Kart, the Monsters Land with their Kuka Arm ride system for the Frankenstein or Monsters ride, and there's mock spinning roller coaster they just added on there, the Wizarding World based on the London and Paris versions. You're going to be walking to the Paris sections, and then you're going to be going to the Flu Network to get back to the London main Harry Potter story for that attraction, and upgraded Transformers type ride system with the Scoop vehicle, and a theater is going to be going there as well. Then, of course, you got the massive 20-acre expansion pad. Then, the middle of the hub is going to be themed to space. Obviously, you can see with the names Grand Helios Hotel, the Starfall Racers, a rumored name roller coaster, racing coaster there, and a couple of flat rides, and lots of shops and restaurants, and what will essentially be a city walk in the middle of the park. Now, this will take Universal to 3 theme parks to almost compete with Disney World's 4 theme parks and 2 water parks. Universal will have 1 water park and 3 theme parks. Obviously, Disney World will have many more hotels, but yeah, this should definitely take a few vacation days away from Walt Disney World. Especially, they just got their Bright Lines or Sunrail station approved there to take visitors right from the airport right over to the convention center and Universal, Epic Universe, and the Orlando Resort. There's gonna be 3 hotels, 2 that are not outlined here, but kind of off property, and the big one, the Grand Helios Hotel. And yeah, this is gonna be a major juggernaut, Universal's largest park ever, and will only be growing, maybe with Zelda in the next couple of years.
So now what you're saying, Wizard, is exactly right. This is a 750-acre complex that's being put down, an entertainment complex. And not only is this thing that big, but also Epic Universe is doing something differently than any theme park has ever tried before. And that is that when you go into this Epic Universe hub, which is its own self an entirely themed area separate from the rest of these locales that you can go to, you can branch out then into these other areas, and these other areas are completely separated off so that they're fully immersive. When you enter into Super Nintendo World, you walk through the pipe like Mario would go through a pipe, and then you enter into an area that's completely closed off from any other area in the park. All you see is Super Nintendo World. When you go into Universal Classic Monsters Land, all you're going to see is that area. And everybody gets the idea of that. This was sort of pioneered by the Harry Potter areas in other Universal parks that proved very successful. Then you had Pandora come out for at Animal Kingdom, which also tried this, where once you go into the area, you really can't see anywhere else. You had the same thing with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. But now we're getting a park that is pre-planned from the very beginning to isolate you once you're in these areas so that you're fully immersed, you're fully living in these fantasy realms. Now, the reason that we're chatting today about Zelda in terms of Epic Universe is because not only does Epic Universe present itself as a major competitor to Walt Disney World, and here's one of the things about that. Super Nintendo World features a castle. It features Peach's Castle. And Peach's Castle is, make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, it is going up directly against Cinderella's Castle in terms of trying to pull in guests, to pull in customers, to pull in fans. And this is one of those things, Super Nintendo World, Mario, the Mario franchise, is one of those things that has brand recognition up there that you would normally only see with something like Mickey Mouse, but Mario has that sort of a pull. Everybody knows who Mario is. Everybody knows the characters around Mario. People have been playing Mario and Donkey Kong and all these things since the 80s, and you have multi-generational brand loyalty. And so it's not to speak hyperbolically to say that people will identify with Peach's Castle in a different way, but with the same veracity that you see with Cinderella's Castle. So that's one thing. But what we're hearing now, Wizard, is that as Nintendo and its partners are looking to build an NCU, a Nintendo Cinematic Universe, well, it turns out that simultaneously, Epic Universe may be having some trouble acquiring the property, not physical property, but the intellectual property that they had envisioned for that 20-acre expansion pad. And so what I'm talking about here is that many have speculated in the past that that 20-acre expansion pad could be used for a huge, fully immersive Lord of the Rings area. And if you did something like that, where you featured, for example, the Shire, and if you featured the Mount Doom and all these kinds of things, that would pull in huge huge numbers of people if you did it right. I mean, I can't even imagine the number of people who would be drawn into a Middle Earth area, but I think it would be on par with Harry Potter. But that doesn't seem to be where that's going. Now, before we continue on Wizard, what are your thoughts on if Epic Universe had been able to do a Middle Earth expansion? Do you think that would have been highly successful? Do you think it would have been on par with something akin to Harry Potter?
You know, knowing Universal and they made it super immersive and as cool as Harry Potter and Nintendo, I think so. I mean, I've seen Lord of the Rings, but I forgot everything about it. But I would definitely be interested.
They are long movies, I'll grant you that.
Yeah, and I'm interested. I'd be interested because the environment would probably be really cool, but I don't think it would match Potter Nintendo. Maybe that's because I'm just not as interested in Lord of the Rings, but I feel like Nintendo and Potter are still more relevant even now, even after Fantastic Beasts. It's still like in the conversation. And the Rings of Power did kind of on Amazon. I don't see many people talking about it, so I feel like they'd have to make it look amazing. And I feel like maybe eventually it could get up to those levels, but maybe not like initially. It would have to be like based on it's just so cool and so immersive that then it would just flood over to those levels. But I feel like that would be it. I feel like people wouldn't go with it and go home and watch Lord of the Rings. I feel like the Universal Land is amazing. But then other than that, I don't think it's the brand recognition is just not. Potter and Nintendo are still, in my opinion, higher. And you know what? Zelda may be a better fit for that area if they do go with that. Because I just know Nintendo games are just really popular. Like, again, I know more about Zelda, and I've even played a Zelda game than I do about Lord of the Rings. And that's simply because my cousins keep telling me about it, and they played Super Smash Bros. And everything. And I know, like, nothing more of the characters than I know from Lord of the Rings. So I feel like, you know, maybe it was a blessing in disguise if Lord of the Rings did fall through.
Right. So if you look at Epic Universe and you look at the properties that they currently have that they could use, well, you could definitely see that they need something more. Now, Epic Universe is going to be a massive success when it comes out, right? We know that. We know that everybody's excited about this park. It's going to be a big thing. But if you look at it, you've got Super Nintendo World. Okay, that's a huge draw, right? That can drive the entire theme park on its own, and it will. But then you've got the Universal's classic Monsters Land, and I'm not sure that that's going to be a huge draw. That's going to be something fun for people to do, and there will be some, small group of or some small percentage of customers who are excited about that. Now, with the Wizarding World, that's hard for me to gauge because I don't know if that still pulls the same enthusiasm because it will have to be compared to the other Harry Potter areas that are over in the other Universal parks in Orlando. So if it is better, then I suppose that pulls in. But, it's not brand new. It's not a new IP coming in. And then the other land they have is How to Train Your Dragon. And I don't know about you, Wizard, but I just don't feel like How to Train Your Dragon is quite the massive IP that would pull people in. So to me, it looks like Super Nintendo World is the biggest draw at this point. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, but I have to say, another thing, almost like I said with the Lord of the Rings, but I feel like after everything opens, and people go and experience the Monsters Land, I feel like that one will be a sleeper hit. If I had to rank them, I'd be like Nintendo, Monsters, Potter, and then Dragon. I feel like Monsters is going to be a real sleeper hit, but only after it opens, because I feel like when people get into it and then word of mouth will really expand. Monsters, I'd watch out for Monsters. That might be pretty good, but definitely Nintendo will be the number one draw in terms of what initially gets people to the park. Because Nintendo, I know people are already trying to that told me they want to plan flights for Orlando in 2025 just for Nintendo already. So definitely a massive draw.
Sure. Now let's talk about the topic of this video, which is we're looking at a Nintendo cinematic universe, and we're in sort of that nascent stage where we're not even to the first film. Okay, so it's sort of like talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe even before the first Iron Man comes out. That's where we are. But we know that there's a Mario Brothers movie that's on the way, and we know it's one of the most anticipated films of the year for 2023. It's going to be big. It has a shot at actually breaking the $1 billion mark. We'll see what it does. Then on top of that, we have two now reports, one from me, one from Giant Freaking Robot, whoever their sources are, that Zelda, the movie, is in the very early stages of development with Illuminations. So, here's my thought. If Epic Universe is looking now to fill that 20-acre expansion pad, and if it's difficult for them to grab something, say, like Lord of the Rings, then I can only imagine, and let me say this, let me preface it by saying there are only so many intellectual properties out there available that could drive enthusiasm like what we're about to discuss. But just imagine, folks, everybody out there listening to this video, and I know it took a while to get here, but we needed to lay the groundwork. Not everybody knows even what Epic Universe is. But just imagine if you entered into that expansion pad and you were going through, let's say, castle walls, or maybe you're going through a cavern in a mountain, and you open up into this fully immersive land that is Hyrule. And for those of you who don't know, that is the world in which the Zelda characters, Link and Zelda, Ganondorf, all of those, they inhabit this world called Hyrule. And then the only question would be, well, which Hyrule do they do? Because there have been so many different iterations, because Nintendo goes in and does all of these new things when they are designing out their new Zelda games. They always choose different art styles and things. So the cool thing about this, Wizard, is that if they were to go this route, then they could go with a number of different versions of this universe, or they could do an amalgamation of all of them. So they could do Ocarina of Time, they could do Breath of the Wild, they could go back to the original NES and SNES Zelda games to build this thing out. There's so many opportunities, and not only that, but just like Mario, it is multi-generational, because moms and dads are going to know what this is, kids are going to know what this is, and all of them come to it with their own memories of playing these games. Wizard, what do you think about the inherent power of video games being transformed into theme park lands? Do you think that video games come with sort of this automatic advantage over some of these other intellectual properties?
Yeah, I think it's actually very smart, because video games, definitely more so than movies, are, like you said, are multi-generational. Like, the Marvel and the MCU, many people, may not like there, especially when there's different versions of, like, let's say a Batman character. Some people may like this Batman, that Batman. But if there's just Mario, just the same Mario for like decades, and the same game just updated. Zelda, same thing. These games have like longer, longer shelf life than these movies, especially newer movies that maybe some adults are not interested in, but they were in, like said, the 80s. My dad played Mario, and I played Mario when I was in the 2000s. So games, it's a really smart idea and I'm surprised it actually hasn't been adopted sooner. Game IPs going into theme parks, because there's no timeline. It's just you can. They last forever. They don't get old. They only get updated maybe with the modern graphics, but the premise of each game really lasts forever. So I think it's definitely better than a movie, which can, again, as you've seen with the Wizarding World, has fallen out of favor, right? But Mario hasn't fallen out of favor because it's just same Mario, So I think that's a great idea, and I'm surprised. I'm sure more theme park companies, they'd be smart to do it, adapt games into theme lands, immersive theme park lands.
Sure, and you could even imagine that there would be some effort by whomever to pull in Sonic the Hedgehog, which would be a competitor to Nintendo, potentially, let's say. I'm not saying that that's guaranteed, and I know that there have been attempts to do Sonic in like Sega, for example, sponsored some indoor theme parks back in the 90s. I know that's been attempted, but there's not been a real push behind it. But you could sort of see like an arms race taking off from these companies as they began to seek out Japanese and video game franchises that are largely pristine and not damaged in any way in the eyes of Western consumers. What we're looking at on the screen
and
right now,
especially
by
since the
way,
Sonic movies are doing very well.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And so what we're looking at on the screen right now is a map of of where Epic Universe is going. Now, it's under construction right now. Google Earth has not been updated to show that exactly, but that's where this is going. 700 acres of land. And again, Disney really doesn't have an answer for Epic Universe right now, but they certainly don't have an answer if there's this massive Zelda area that could potentially be brought in as an expansion. Let me say again, sources told me that's one of the things they're looking at, but this is very, very early. At the same time, we're going to talk about it because it's a lot of fun to talk about, right? So sometimes when for example, last week when I broke the news that Zelda was going to be in development for a movie, like that was more assured by far than what we're talking about now. But it's a lot of fun to discuss because just think about the idea of people going into a Hyrule kingdom, and you could even base some of the rides or some of the attractions around. In the Zelda games, they have these temples where you have to solve problems and puzzles and things. You could go crazy if you're a theme park designer. You could go crazy with some of this stuff. But Wizard, what do you think that Disney is going to do in response to Epic Universe? Do they have anything in their plans to come back at Universal Studios, or are they just content to sit on their laurels and watch this happen?
Well, first, let's see when they open Tron. No, just kidding. Alright, so, God, I don't know, but seriously, I was kind of half kidding. But even if they had some kind of response...
Well, Tron's at what, 6 years now?
Yeah, 6 years. It would take them like
right,
a
so
million
it's
years.
one and a half Epcots in development time.
Exactly, and keep in mind, folks, this is a cloned ride from Shanghai. It's not like some new invention or something. It's not like Rise of the Resistance.
Which in and of itself is not that impressive of a roller coaster. The iconography and the facade are amazing, but the ride itself is nothing to be all that excited about, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, and from the videos I see, it seems pretty short, so it's not like lots going on inside. So, it'd be crazy to me. I mean, like, they built Super Nintendo World in Hollywood faster. Crazy. But, so if they did have a response, I feel like it would open in 2040. But, yeah, it doesn't seem like they're working on anything.
Wizard with the truth bombs today.
Yeah, like, and I was like, it's crazy. And like here in Disneyland, the treehouse is taking... Oh, could be a whole nother video. But,
sure.
Yeah, I don't see any response or talking about any response or thinking. I don't even know what they would do.
It really is something, isn't it? I don't know if they just think that they own that top spot and nobody can compete with them, but they certainly don't act like they're deeply concerned about Epic Universe, and I think they should be. I think that Epic Universe.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I think so. I know some people, at least I've seen, are like, "Oh, Disney doesn't need to respond." But look, only so many people have, a certain amount of vacation days. You can't take forever off of work, right? So I mean, they may not entirely spend their time at Universal, but instead of like 5 days at Disney and 2 at Universal, they might split it down the middle, or like, let's make it 6. Maybe split down the middle and do 3 and 3 or 4 and 2 at Universal, especially because they have 3 theme parks and a water park to go to, and this will be brand new. And at Disney World, again, back to taking a long time to kind of open new attractions. They'll be like, "Oh, I've been on this thing so many times at Epcot or Animal Kingdom, but there's a brand new Universal Park where I haven't been on any of the attractions, so why don't we start there?" And even just that, that takes a day off or 2 off your Disney World or your whole order trip. And Disney World less money, fewer hotel stays. So they should definitely be thinking about it, unless they want to be all cocky and be like, "Oh, we're number 1. Screw those other little guys." But
that never goes well. That never goes well to think that way.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's gonna come bite them in the butt. I mean, look, this thing it's gonna be successful. I think it'll be extremely successful. But even if it's not extreme, it'll be successful. It's something new. Everyone likes something new. And it'll be the largest theme park in North America built in at least 2001, right? So that's huge. I mean, that's humongous. Definitely don't sleep on the Epic Universe, Disney, or anyone really, any
right?
Disney fan.
So, Wizard, let me wrap it up this way and just say that there are going to be people who watch, let's say, half this video or whatever. Maybe they watch the whole thing, but there may be some naysayers out there who are like, well, why are you even talking about this yet? I mean, this is so far down the road, and you don't have any direct evidence that Zelda's coming in just yet. Why are you even talking about it? And to them, what I would say is this: look at the enthusiasm and the popularity that is being driven by the Nintendo world over in Japan, which is now being brought in much smaller fashion to Hollywood because of the land issue, and now being brought in much larger degree to Central Florida. If that is so successful that it can move an entire theme park, a brand new theme park, all on its own, really. I mean, the other stuff's great, but people are excited about Super Nintendo World. If it can do that, then why in the world would you not think that they're looking at what else could do it? And you know what else could do it? Something that's very similar from the same company with the same level of enthusiasm. And the only other property like that is Zelda. So if you want to go out there and say, well, it's too early to talk about that, it's really not, because you can narrow it down to basically one other property that has the ability to do the same thing that Nintendo World is already doing. And what it's already doing is driving a huge amount of enthusiasm for a brand new theme park. It's nothing to sneeze at.
And let's not forget that Zelda itself was already, at one point rumored for the Kids Zone area in Universal Studios Florida. It was rumored, or at least told me by a couple of team members, that we're thinking of putting a Zelda show in our Hollywood version. At one point.
Right, exactly.
So it was already rumored. So definitely not too far-fetched to think it will be getting its own land eventually in Epic Universe.
Well, let's say this. How much excitement do you think that people would have? How crazy would the headlines be if Epic Universe announces in the next 3 or 4 years that Hyrule is coming to Central Florida? I think that it will go nuts. I think people will lose their minds, and I think that's the sort of thing that will drive people cross-country, cross-continent to go see. I think it would be that big. Wizard, final thoughts on Epic Universe and the expansion possibilities that are out there?
Well, I'm super excited. I'll be out there in 2025, and any expansion they do, I know they'll do it very well. Zelda sounds fantastic. Lord of the Rings sounds fantastic. But I'm just so glad they set aside massive, 20 acres is huge. I feel like no matter what they do there, that's really a big immersive plot of land. They can put something really good there. And even the other ones, 7 acres. I mean, Super Nintendo World, 7 acres, and that's looking pretty amazing. So, I think they can, no matter what space they do, what they do, it'll be chef's kiss top tier. And like you said, Disney should not just be sitting up on their laurels. They should, at least be looking at it. Be like, I wonder what's going on down a few miles south of me on I-4.
That's right. Now, Wizard, tell us where we can find you on the web for people who are interested in following.
You can find me on Theme Park Wizard on YouTube, where I do Universal Studios Hollywood updates. I was just there today. And a lot of Nintendo coverage when I go to the team member and pass holder preview in a couple of weeks. And then I do Universe Control updates from Twitter, really. But I do them. And you can find me on Twitter at theme_wizard and Instagram at theme_park_wizard.
Links will be in the descriptions for the video, ladies and gentlemen. Check down below. Also, make sure that you hit that like button. Make sure that you share this out and hit subscribe. Remember, this is a brand new channel. We've only been around for 1 week. So every minute that you watch helps. Every time you like it and share it, it tells those algorithms that you love us. And we love you right back. So make sure you do that. We'll have more entertainment news coming out, more theme park news, if it turns out that we were right on it with this Hyrule rumor. Remember, you heard it here first. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you do, keep having fun.